Brendan Flanagan once said the better able team members are to engage, speak, listen, hear, interpret, and respond constructively, the more likely their teams are to leverage conflict rather than be leveled by it. And Dale Carnegie reminds us when dealing with people, remember, you're not dealing with creatures of logic, but creatures of emotion. Handling conflicts in the workplace can be an intimidating and unattractive prospect, but handling them badly or not handling them at all is sure to make things even worse. Conflicts, whether they involve you or whether they're among other members of your team, can seriously damage your organization's climate if not dealt with right away. But how do we properly resolve conflicts and disputes in a way that minimizes dissatisfaction from both parties and positively impacts our organization? In this course, we're going to teach you how to do exactly that.
85% of employees go through conflicts, which disrupt work and prevent smooth collaboration. 24% of a manager's day is spent handling conflict, though this doesn't mean that this time is spent positively remedying it. Conflict can create tension, and recent statistics show that 58% of employees resign due to a company's toxic office environment. These statistics show that conflict resolution is an increasingly important area that businesses should focus on. Our course is going to consist of a series of critical discussion points. These are designed to cover this broad topic as thoroughly as possible, to encourage growth in these vital areas, and to facilitate a real and fruitful discussion within your organization about how you can each improve on this essential characteristic both at work and in your personal lives in general. Some of these will be pretty lengthy, and some will be relatively straightforward and brief. At the very end of this roadmap comes the most important final step. Discussion time. Do not skip this. This is the most important part of this training. When you finish this course, you need to spend at least an hour or so going over the questions we supply at the end as a group. Whoever's the head honcho in the group should designate a facilitator whose responsibility it is that each question is covered and that everyone, time permitting, is able to have their say. Make sure that all contributions are valued, all suggestions considered, and all opinions respected. So let's move into the first discussion point. No matter who you are, conflict is always bound to happen. Whether you're a manager or a staff member, there's always going to be conflict in the workplace. Conflicts are normal, healthy even, but they can cause everything to come to a screeching halt: your workflow, your productivity. One can't avoid conflict because negative emotions pile up and create a toxic work environment. Allow conflicts to sit too long, and they become a liability to the company. For everyone's sake, hire a manager or supervisor who isn't afraid of dealing with drama. Deal with the issue as soon as you can. It's wonderful to work out the conflict the moment you realize it's there, but a word of advice: try giving the parties a bit of time to collect themselves before the talk. If they seem to be very heated about the conflict, it's better to let the parties sleep on it and talk it out the following day. Having everyone be level-headed and composed going into the meeting will make conflict resolution considerably easier. Sort out your feelings before you get started. Calmly helping two parties who are antagonizing one another to solve a problem may seem daunting, but think of it as an opportunity. There wouldn't be any conflict if there were no problems at all with how you're running the company. Before you have the talking to with the parties directly involved, you can suggest that they name each emotion they feel at the time. They then have to ask themselves the question, why do I feel like this? It'll help them get a clearer picture of the whole dispute and make the discussion smoother. Have a talk, person to person. Meet the parties face to face in a private space and for an adequate period of time. Everyone directly involved has to be in the same room to resolve the issue. Make sure that the meeting isn't too soon nor too late in terms of proximity from the incident as well as the time of day. Do be careful, as for some people, being asked to a meeting with your boss and a person you have a problem with can feel intimidating. This may feed into the negative emotions that were already present due to the conflict. You can avoid this by clearly defining the meeting's details, the time, the venue, what the meeting is about, and, if possible, its goals. Having a private meeting with your employees to work through the conflict will help quell rumors. If there are already existing rumors, best to quell them as soon as possible. Speak in a professional manner. There should be an atmosphere of professionalism, peace, and safety in the room to facilitate a smooth discussion. If one party gets too disruptive during the discussion, you remind everyone that it isn't for you, though it'll definitely help the company a lot. Best not to add this out loud. The main goal is for your employees to find closure. Here are ways to use respectful communication. Use objective, neutral language. It can help avoid escalation as well as avoid alienating the other party. Avoid name-calling, insults, and the like. This will keep the opposing side from feeling that they are being belittled or attacked. It also goes without saying that coarse, violent language should also be avoided. Cursing is absolutely reprehensible and must be stifled immediately. Be fair to everyone involved. The parties talking to each other first can eliminate the need for an intervention. However, if they don't speak to one another, or they have the talk and can't come to an agreement, or don't talk and immediately move to starting a commotion at work, it'll be paramount for a third party to step in. There may be a chance that you, the third party, have made friends with one or more people involved. It's not necessary to renounce your friendship with them, but you still need to be fair and impartial when handling the conflict. Take care not to meet with the parties one by one. There's a chance that you'll have two stories that do not quite match up, as both sides will want to be in the right, even if they don't mean to. It would be best to speak to everyone all together from the beginning. Make use of the rule book. It's best to outline the company's pre-existing rules and regulations early on. All the better if it's got rules dealing with conflict in particular. Define how your organization solves issues, and there'll be less chances of staff causing conflict, and even less of any confusion when one arises. Try to go over the company rule book or policies. See if you have a section on handling conflict, if not a module, that's detailed, clear, and uncontestable. If the regulations aren't clear enough, it's imperative to read through them, or at least an abridged version of them, before starting to solve the matter at hand. Once you've got that down, you can direct your attention to the employees. Keep in mind that emotions, which are natural for people to experience, are valid, but behavior will be subject to scrutiny. Be forgiving. Your employees may be subconsciously thinking they'll be punished for having arguments or disagreements that disrupted the usual workday. This might add unwarranted stress to the encounter and cause them to act in a way that you believe they're the one in the right. Assure them that this isn't a fight to see who's right and who's wrong. You should let them know at the outset that they aren't in danger of getting any sort of penalty, much less being dismissed from their job. This will allow for a less self-centered discussion. If you're one of the parties embroiled in the conflict, be prepared to apologize. Your fault may not even be something that you realized you did, but regardless, you need to apologize. And when you do, it should come from the heart. Direct and guide the discussion. If you're the neutral party handling the conflict, be even-handed all the way to the end. This goes double for managers. You're the leader of the pack. The team looks to you to solve the issue at hand and put it to rest. To help you out, here's the OIIR method. It guides the way one person can express themselves. Observation. Start the sentence with I. Impact. State what the person had done in a neutral way. Interpretation. Say how their action or actions made you feel. Request. As it says, make a request, not an order. It would also help if the company had regular team-building activities which build better relationships within the company. This'll definitely lessen the chances of misunderstandings and conflicts popping up. It'll also help reduce stress and allow employees to speak up and be heard. Have the two sides engage with each other. You shouldn't lecture the parties. You're instead allowing them a space for their cases to be heard. Each person should lay bare their grievances against the other party in an environment that truly feels neutral. One party shouldn't monopolize the discussion, nor attempt to undermine the other's position. Let one person speak and continue to do so until they've finished sharing. Then the opposing side should state their piece until they're finished. The objective is to find the actual problem, not the faults of the other side. A possible course of action is to have the meeting with the two opposing parties. Then after the discussion has ended, you can leave the room. After, the two sides can then talk to one another privately. Here they can work out their solutions or just put their hard feelings to rest. Listen to what your people have to say. Not only should you allow your staff the space and the time to talk, you should also listen carefully to them. If you don't focus on the discussion, they'll think that you don't care for their well-being, especially their emotional well-being, in the slightest. If what the employees are saying involves a fault of your position or any other parts of the company, don't get offended. File away the information for later and investigate it as part of the post-conflict process. Apply the active listening technique, which will greatly help to share their perspective to the other side. Here's how you go about doing that. Listen well as the person shares their side of the story. Understand what they're trying to say, not just the words they're using. Once an employee has finished their piece, reiterate what they've told you in a way that's objective and easy to comprehend. You may ask questions to further clarify the employee's point, too. You must do this in order to really get to the heart of what they're trying to say. If modifications are needed, restate the situation's details again. Analyze the behavior and not the personality. Personalities can't be readily controlled, and especially not when you're inflamed by a conflict. Sometimes a person doesn't even realize certain aspects of their personality, nor that they come off that way. If you, as a mediator, draw attention to it, and make that the problem, it'll feel as if you're attacking them personally. Avoiding this is crucial. You can't just tell your employees that they are being condescending or annoying. It's too vague. Look to an employee's behavior instead. Pick out an example of a recent incident and address that using objective language. If there have been other instances, you may also bring these up in discussion. However, it's best to have recent examples so the employee is sure to remember. The road to figuring it all out. Once you've examined the details of the situation, you and the opposing parties need to start looking for a root cause. This can be easier said than done. To make it easier finding said root cause, you need to keep your parties cooperative, even if they're still on opposing sides. To do this, find things the parties can agree on, such as what they like about the other side. They've got to admit this out loud, even if begrudgingly. They should still be allowed to disagree with things, though it's more controlled. Don't worry so much that they're disagreeing, disliking, or hating something, or maybe even someone. You're building their goodwill using these points of contention too. Once you've gotten everyone in a more cooperative mindset, you're free to analyze where, why, and how things went wrong without too much trouble. Find the most high-priority concerns at the moment. Put them into a list if you can. When you're done, summarize everything in an easy-to-grasp manner. After, ask if both sides agree. Modify it if you missed something. Work on it all together. The opposing parties are capable of owning up to the problem and solving it given enough guidance. They just need to put their feelings aside and understand one another. The opposing parties should do the bulk of the work. You, as a manager or third party, are only there to ensure things don't spiral out of control. There still may be room for misunderstandings, so watch out for communication breakdowns at any point during the discussion, as well as lines of thought that won't result in anything substantial. There needs to be a civil discussion between the two sides. They're allowed to air out grievances, but don't let them complain too much. Their main focus should be to arrive at agreeable solutions after all. Compromise is key. Each person in the room wants something. These desires may not line up at first glance, therefore you must all be prepared to compromise for the sake of finding a solution that's mutually beneficial and possibly replicable for future situations. During the discussion, both sides need to be able to share pressing desires or goals and why they want them. They should be open and honest about their interests. From there, it'll be easier for you, the third party, to figure out a solution that can keep everybody happy. If you understand what makes a certain employee tick, you'll be able to more efficiently help them reach their goal or goals. Apply this to the conflict resolution process, and you'll have it in the bag. Plan it out. You need to discuss and keep discussing until all the problems or concerns have been discovered. In order to avoid feeling overwhelmed, make a list of the complications you found. Suss out the most important ones. You just need to focus on the main problems. If an issue isn't as important, you can always leave it for later, or just forget it entirely. It would be marvelous if everything could be talked out and solved in a single day, but things might not be so smooth. A conflict might require more time than what you've set aside for the initial meeting. In that case, best to implement some solutions as soon as the meeting ends in order to take care of a pressing issue, however tentative. The plan may involve planning out your next actions. How will they be done? what's to be done, and by when is it to be done. Having a list of issues ranging from the most urgent ones to the least. You may then work on them one by one. Setting up regular meetings to check out how the employees are doing and if the solutions are being implemented as initially stated. Out-of-the-box conclusions shouldn't be ruled out. With an array of employees at work, you may not know who's going to butt heads with whom until they're already in your office waiting for you to sort the conflict out. Finding a solution that satisfies everyone involved can be tricky and require a bit of work, but you need to find it. If one party bows out to the other, it won't be good for the long run. It can be used as ammunition for a future conflict. Don't give in or agree to something too fast. Make sure you come to an appropriate solution in a natural way. It's got to feel earned. Be specific. At the end of the discussion, you've got to make sure everything's crystal clear to everyone in the room. It's your final chance to make sure that nobody has any qualms or misunderstandings with written or verbal wording. Lay everything out nice and orderly. Try not to forget any points, as your employees might have misunderstandings later on. As with the active listening technique, reiterate every point in a systematic manner. Ask everyone at the end of your summation if you missed anything, and if so, restate as needed. Say you're sorry. If you're a manager, you also need to evaluate yourself. You've got to accept that part of the issue might involve you, perhaps something you did or didn't do. Regardless of the finer details of the situation, neither one side or the other can be entirely right. And as a leader in the company, you have to take responsibility. Everyone must apologize. Whether your fault was intended or not, here's how to make a formal apology. Realize what you've done, or what helped the conflict snowball into such a disruptive presence. After, you must say to the aggrieved individual, "I'm sorry, I was wrong." Then state why you're wrong and the reasons why. Tell the other person you want your relationship to go back to the way it was. Ask that person for ways to remedy the solution, alongside the solutions you've already thought up in order to keep the incident from happening again. Tell them that you'll take their suggestions to heart. They have to be aware that you're making a conscious decision to fix the behavior. Ask for their forgiveness. Continue working on the conflict for posterity. You can't call the conflict done just because all parties seem satisfied and the meeting was adjourned. Depending on the outcome, you may need to have more meetings to discuss the solutions with the same parties, or perhaps additional or different ones. You need to hold yourself and the company accountable for what happens next. Upon evaluating everything that was divulged in the meeting, you have to document it. Then ensure that you're thorough in your investigation. Here are some possible issues to consider. Was there an issue with company processes, equipment, or facilities? Are the systems efficient or inefficient? Are the staff, especially those in positions of power, being professional? Are the company's policies fair and inclusive to everyone? Have there been any recent changes that the employees are having trouble adjusting to? Are the staff being overwhelmed by their tasks? Perhaps they're having trouble with deadlines. Don't forget to acknowledge positive change. Observe how the parties you spoke with are doing. See if their behavior has changed for the better, and acknowledge their progress. Big or small, you must commend your employees for positive actions. You've got to let your people know that you're invested in their well-being and not just how well they're working for your company. Make sure that nobody is struggling with expressing themselves. To stop conflicts before they even occur, your company should have a culture or environment that allows for feedback or comments. This weeds out potential issues which can cause trouble for the company and its staff. If you don't have such practices in place, then there's no better time to start than right now. Don't just leave it at setting down a box for people to write down their comments or criticisms. This seems impersonal, like you won't be that involved in or concerned about handling the issue. Have one-on-one meetings with your employees for a given amount of time. As for the amount, it depends on how much time you can spare to talk to everybody. More time will be better, but 15 minutes, give or take, should be enough to ask someone how they're doing, if there's anything bothering them, if there's something that needs to be fixed, or if they've got any suggestions. Thinking of the future. If you want your company to be prosperous, you've got to take on conflicts in the present to pave the way for the future. Resolve conflicts successfully, and you'll reap the benefits. On the other hand, if you put off conflict, then you'll ensure that your company's going to be stagnant, inefficient, and dreadful to work at. So even as you're in the middle of two hostile parties who don't seem like they're cooperating, remember that this is all for the best outcome possible, and a future without much infighting. And now, it's discussion time, the most important part of this training. Whoever's the head honcho in the group should designate a facilitator whose responsibility it is that each of the questions you see on your screen is covered, and that everyone, time permitting, is able to have their say. Make sure all contributions are valued, all suggestions considered, and all opinions respected.